The Chiefs won the AFC West for the 7th straight year, and that's the headline from Sunday's 30-24 overtime victory over the Houston Texans. But there are plenty of subplots to discuss, and we do that on today's SportsBeat KC podcast. I'm Blair Kirchhoff, and it's Monday, December 19th. The Texans have one victory, have now lost 9 straight, and they picked up a measly 219 total yards on Sunday. How did they push the 11-3 Chiefs to the brink? So many Chiefs mistakes. We go over them all with star columnist Vahe Gregorian and beat writer Herbie Teope. Let's jump right into the show that started as a post-game SportsBeat Live broadcast. Hello and welcome to SportsBeat Live. This is the Chiefs post-game show from the Kansas City Star. You're going to hear from the folks in the media who know them best. Today it's Herbie Teope and Vahe Gregorian. And we want to hear from you because you know your Chiefs. Let us know what you think about the 30-24 victory over the Houston Texans, a game that required overtime. And the Chiefs overcame some things. They created a lot of problems for themselves. A lot happened in this game. If after last week's victory at Denver, closer than expected, you were thinking a game against the 1-11-1 Houston Texans would give you a leisurely afternoon of football watching. You were sadly mistaken. So,
scolded by Blair.
There is no leisurely afternoon with these Chiefs, who, by the way, are 11-3 and the AFC West champs for the 7th consecutive season. That means they are guaranteed at least one home game in the playoffs, and could be 2, it could be 3, it could be 2, right? And that would be something if they're the number 1 seed. Even if they're number 2 seed, they could play 2 at home and then 1 on the road. So anyway, let's just go with initial thoughts. Vahe, what was going through your mind during this game, and what is 1 or 2 of the big takeaways for you?
Well, look, the main thing is that, sort of to your point at the start, Blair, that you felt like, all right, after what happened last week, I don't know if I expected them to win leisurely, but I expected them to come out and play, rip snorting football, right? That, all right, well, we're not going to just, drift and meander through this. And it was different than Denver. They were off kilter from the start this time. So that it is distressing. And that's my biggest takeaway from the game. It is distressing. On the other hand, and this is really true, okay, they've got the foundational work done with the 7th straight AFC West. Okay, that's a good box to check. They sort of held serve, or at least kept pace with Buffalo, which, this would have really mattered if they lost today. You sort of feel like, well, there's no chance for the number 1 seed. I still think there's plenty of chance for the number 1 seed. I mean, especially with Buffalo playing Cincinnati and at New England, I think, in the last game. So that's still in play. And then a little something I just looked up a little while ago. It's easy to forget this. But if you recall that after they went to the Super Bowl after the 2019 season, the next season, as they went into the playoffs, the Chiefs won 7 straight games by 6 points or fewer. And several of those, I just did these numbers, 10, 14, 22. 3 of the teams they played were 14 and 34. Okay. Do I do the math right? Yeah. So they played some crummy teams in there. They barely beat them. And I think, we just sort of thought, well, that's not what a championship team does, and this and that. I just feel like we need to remember every season it's kind of its own adventure. We're not going to know what this stuff means till we put it in the, flux capacitor later and look back at what this meant.
Okay, so Vahe wildly optimistic about these Chiefs after squeaking by the Broncos and the Texans. All right, Herbie, throw your 2 cents in here. What did you see, and what should be the biggest concerns from this game?
First off, major kudos to Vahe there for the flux capacitor reference.
I know. How about that?
Back to the Future. My goodness. Look.
Well, it's good that men of a certain age know the reference. As we would say.
Coffee and men of a certain age. I tend to be optimistic a little with Vahe, but when you look at the Broncos and now the Texans, we're talking about two of the worst scoring offenses in the NFL. Last week, the Broncos only averaged, I think it was 13.8 points per game. They scored 28. This week, the Texans averaged like 16 points a game, and they put up 24. And so you can't help but be concerned about what's going on with this defense. Turnovers, too. Both turnovers today, the Isaiah Pacheco's lost fumble, which is his second of the year, fourth on the season, second lost on the year. Normally sure-handed Juju Smith-Schuster with the fumble, led to two touchdowns. You can't keep putting your defense on short fields in bad situations when you're facing these kinds of teams, and they just gave them hope. The Chiefs played with fire today. I think, Blair, you're talking, earlier you gave that long speech about, what we thought was going to happen. Dude, I went through 3 rewrites. Again, like, okay, the game's over. Whoa, there goes a missed field goal. And it seems like there's always something every week. I don't think we've seen a complete game from the Chiefs. Maybe once or twice this season, but it's kind of hard to put your finger on it. But I'm concerned.
Yeah, look, 9 straight games with a turnover now for the Chiefs. If there was good news to come out of that, none of them were an interception by Mahomes. And we'll get into Mahomes in a little bit. But he had a fantastic game, one of the best numbers games of his career. But Roy is makes the same point, Herbie, that you did. Defense and turnovers. You keep playing like this again, and you bring this these sort of mistakes to a game against the Bills, the Bengals, and even the Titans, who probably will end up winning their division as well. It's a short stay in the playoffs for you. There's no doubt about that. Both of the fumbles, one by Juju Smith-Schuster and the other by Isaiah Pacheco, led to Texans touchdowns, which means the defense couldn't rescue the offense in those moments. One was a short field, one wasn't, but both resulted in touchdowns, just as the Texans fumble resulted in the game-winning Chiefs touchdown. And so, it's funny. I do the grades for the Chiefs after the game and try to get them done within about 10 minutes afterwards. And this was a game in which if the Chiefs had lost to, and I'll repeat, the 1-11-1 Texans, everything would have been an F. Everything. Every category I would have failed. But because the Chiefs pulled it out, their passing offense gets a B. They don't get an A because there were some mistakes in the pass. As good as Mahomes was, 20 straight completions, right? Personal record. A career best completion percentage, 87.8% for a full game. 336 yards, a fantastic game for Patrick Mahomes. He did get sacked twice. He did misconnect on a couple of long balls. The one early to Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and then the one to Justin Watson. I thought both of those were there and could have been very long gainers for the Chiefs. So it wasn't perfect, but Mahomes was very, very good. Let's stay on the defense, though, for a second. Roy brings up Juan Thornhill. I thought he had a terrible game, Juan Thornhill, just a terrible game. And penalties at the wrong times. The coverage was not so much. We've talked about it before, but I just thought among others who had poor games, Juan Thornhill had a bad one. So what else, Herbie, can we say about this team? Vahe mentioned it. This is a team that that has just given up too many points to the Broncos and the Texans. But Texans only finished with 210 total yards. Is there something there that we can take away from the defense and feel a little bit good about?
No.
Okay.
You say 210 yards. I get that, but when I look at the Texans, okay, they didn't have their leading rusher. They didn't have Brandon Cooks. They didn't have Collins, both of their leading receivers and their top rusher. And yet here we are with Davis Mills, keeping them in the game with 3 touchdown passes to all his tight ends. And I get that the Chiefs defense is young. We know they're young and they're going to run into these situations. But when you face off against the Broncos and Texans and you somehow cannot close out the game, and it's a lot closer than we thought it should be, the Chiefs entered this game 14-point favorites and had to have overtime to beat the Texans. And you have to be learned at that. With the defense, without Frank Clark making that play, that really, to me, that was the game-changing play. Willie Gay, the recovery, and obviously Jerick McKinnon, who had a phenomenal game, over the last 2 games. He has 4 touchdowns now. But the defense against these types of opponents, you like to see some domination, and we just don't see it.
Yeah, yep. And Mike reminds us about the penalties. Now, was this a Carl Cheffers game, or were the Chiefs really sloppy on especially on defense when it came to the penalties?
I thought kind of a hybrid. I think, is it Doug or I can't remember who it is, or Roy pointing out the one where Thornhill was basically standing still and got run into and got called for a penalty. Right? I thought we saw a couple of those. I also thought, the other way, one of those plays in the first half, I can't remember who did it now, the way Mahomes got thrown down, that for all the ticky-tack roughness penalties and such we've seen on quarterbacks this year, I was like, that seemed to me to be a textbook example of what you have to call. So, you'd have to, in the eye of the storm, it's sometimes hard to keep track of all. And plus, you're not seeing the whole field in terms of all the things that are happening and about officiating. But I think the Chiefs were deservingly recipients of penalties enough that it calls into question their mindset and their sloppiness, right? All these things kind of, to me, add up a little bit. 10 penalties, probably 15 that were called, or 13 or 14 that were called. A couple declined, a couple were multiple penalties on the same play. Again, with the turnovers, they're down. We don't know the updated totals of the rest of the NFL, but their turnover ratio is down among the bottom 3 or 4 teams in the league now. So those kinds of things, those aren't good indicators. And, again, Blair, back to the one point, I think we sort of made it this way, but just to amplify it, I mean, we've seen these Steve Spagnuolo defenses get better as the season goes on most of the time. Radically a couple different seasons. And that's really not what you'd say we're seeing right now. Not at all. I mean, this was, I think, a season high tying game for the Texans on the scoreboard, the worst team in the NFL. And then a week ago, the season high for the Broncos that were, I think, first or second worst offense in the NFL. That's it's not good.
Troubling. How about Kevin Harlan, who I think is outstanding, and him and Trent Green, I would take them on every game that I watch, Chiefs or otherwise. But how about him summoning the stat, the Texans 0 for 28 on plays that are 3rd and 11 this year. And just as those words were coming out of his mouth, 13-yard touchdown pass from the Texans.
The other thing he did, he said that Butker has never missed more than 4 field goals in the season, as he was missing his 5th. He's pretty uncanny in a lot of ways, and it's a side point. But is there anybody? There is really nobody I'd rather hear do a game than Kevin Harlan. Anybody? Nope. So that's a treat, and not just for his color points, but his insights.
No doubt about it. Okay, so you guys, as veteran Chiefs watchers, see if you agree with me on this. I thought that when the Chiefs, late in the second quarter, Houston decides to punt 4th and 1 at midfield. I thought that was a crazy call by Lovie Smith, but they pinned the Chiefs at the 3, and the Chiefs are, they're screwing around down there. Finally, Mahomes scrambles to the right, throws back to the left, hits Kelsey. One of 10 targets and 10 receptions for Kelsey, by the way. And Kelsey, looks like he's getting jostled and gets a unnecessary roughness penalty. And I can remember thinking, you know what? That's necessary roughness. The way the Chiefs are playing, they needed some kind of spark, and they got the spark, right? They went down the field and got a touchdown right at the end of basically the end of the first half. Butker misses the extra point, but I thought the feel of the game had changed, especially when the Chiefs got the second half kickoff, drove again. It did get a Butker field goal this time, and had scored, last possession of the first half, first possession of the second half. But then, and then the Chiefs get the ball back. They get a defensive hold, get the ball back. That's when Juju Smith fumbled. And again, the game flipped on the Chiefs one more time just because of the fumble.
Yeah, and, I don't know if you guys felt like this, but this was all precarious, right, with all those sorts of things. It could never quite pull away, and you could envision a scenario where they could lose, but I don't think I ever quite thought they would lose. I just sort of thought they're going to pull this out somehow, and it's going to be in the danger zone, but they're going to pull it out. But I hate to keep circling back to this point, but I kind of wonder if they come to feel like that in a game like this, like, well, we fumbled, and I guess we need a little extra juice right now. We'll get it. But the reason I bring it up again is because I think what we're now left to wonder, right, is what they can summon against a team that is the best of the best. And it bears mention that they're 0-2 against the biggest obstacles that I would foresee for them. So at their very best, theoretically, they haven't been good enough to beat the Bills or the Bengals. And at their mediocre mid-range game, they're eking past teams. So I think they're a bit perplexing. It's very hard to picture what this signature is going to be, I think.
Well, and when you think about those two games, Vahe, that you mentioned, the Bengals and the Bills, Chiefs had the ball with the lead in the fourth quarter and turned it over, the Kelsey fumble, and that's what ended up losing the game for the Chiefs that day. And if memory serves, correct me if I'm wrong, Herbie, that against the Bills, they're down 20, they're down 4. They need a touchdown, and Mahomes ends up throwing an interception on the last possession for the Chiefs, as I recall. So turnovers, giveaways have been such a theme for this team this year. We had this discussion, I think it was either earlier this week or after the Denver game. I could be totally wrong. I often am. But turnovers to me are an epidemic. You can't turn them off. Once a team becomes a little turnover prone, it's just hard to stop that in a season. You don't see that. It just tend to happen. And you think about the two giveaways today, they were by new Chiefs, right? Pacheco and Smith-Schuster. And Pacheco paid for his. He was banished to the bench the rest of the first half. I think it either happened late first, early second quarter. And Andy Reid, Eric Bieniemy, they said, enough. You're going to the bench. I never thought he had control of the ball when he fumbled it away. But that's his second lost fumble this year. And he absolutely paid for it with some playing time. And Smith-Schuster's, you just have to – that's his second fumble of the year as well. I'm not used to seeing this from the Chiefs. I'm just not. I know we're circling around here, but
it's funny. They've had some spikes, now and then. Oh, go ahead, Herbie. Sorry, I think we got a little bad connection. Go ahead.
No. I think to Blair's question, what Daniel Beisinger said it a few minutes ago, that the Chiefs seem so Jekyll and Hyde based on the caliber opponent. And I tend to agree with that because we're seeing that now. When you're playing inferior teams, and I'm going to lean on our college football Hall of Fame panel member here, his experience as a Division I college football player. When you're playing an inferior opponent, you don't want to give them hope. You want to put them down, and just to show that you are the dominant team. And when you're not doing that, you got the playoffs here looming on the horizon. You mentioned the Bills, you mentioned the Bengals. They gave them a good fight, and you expect that from when two elite teams go at it. But when you have an elite team and an inferior team, that elite team has to dominate. You can't have those Jekyll and Hyde moments because you just don't know which team is showing up, and that's a concern.
Yeah, it is. Of course, it's absolutely a concern. And, you keep kind of going back to the thought about, can you turn the spigot off and on like that? I mean, it's funny, one of the thoughts I think we had, check me if I'm wrong on this, but I feel like it was pretty evident when we first saw the schedule. The schedule was really front loaded pretty heavy. I mean, that was going to be the first 7, 8, 9 games were going to be pretty telling, and they got through that pretty well. And I feel like the mentality was, and then you can coast to the finish line. And I feel like they're just coasting. And, when you coast, I don't know if you're fully able to re-engage the gears that the way you need them to at your will, right? You got to get out of that. It's about how you play every game. It's if you play down the opponent, that says something about you. And it's not like this is a one-time thing. So again, they may be able to shrug that off, but we have not seen them yet that they're able to beat the best even when they're playing the best, right? So I'm less optimistic about them now than I would have been a month ago or even before the season. I felt like some things could fall their way but now you're seeing the warts and all.
I'm with you on that one, Vahe. And this is a team that could finish 14-3 in the regular season. In fact, will be favored to finish 14-3 in the regular season. And yet I just feel less confident about this team's playoff chances, even though you provided the example of the 2020 regular season and all those close games that the Chiefs won. I remember the Carolina Panthers was one of those games where the Falcons was another one. They needed a missed field goal at the end. And just close game after close game for the Chiefs that they survived. And then they ended up winning 2 home playoff games, right? The Browns and the Bills, and then had the Super Bowl disaster against the Tampa Bay Bucks. All right, so what do we? What's our comment on Harrison Butker? And is this a matter of his opening game injury just messing with him to an extent that he cannot get right this season? Herbie, what do you think?
I think you got to remember a couple of weeks ago, or shortly after he came back off of his high ankle injury, he told a bunch of us in the locker room that he's not going to be 100% the rest of the year. Even Dave Tobe acknowledged that he's not 100% healthy, and Tobe mentioned, a 90% Butker is still better than the majority of the NFL's kickers, and you have to agree with that. I don't think that's too much of an issue with his technique and all that good stuff. I just think he's just not 100% healthy.
It's such an interesting question because, in a sense, all right, it's theoretically at least valiant to keep going if you're not 100% healthy and finding a way. On the other hand, at some point you wonder if he's just on that edge where he's doing the team a disservice. I mean, not that you shouldn't be doing everything you can to play, right? That's the thing. But somebody's got to determine if this is really best chance to win with him as the guy right now, because you just feel like at some point they're going to get burned by a missed PAT. And then it's, and really today, I mean, yeah, they made up for it, but I mean, they got burned by him missing a late field goal. And that wasn't because it was out of his range. And I'm sympathetic if he's still fighting an injury, but at some point it's also hard to, I think, separate the mentality from the execution. I mean, whether, is he doing something mechanically a little different because he's, not quite right? And how much does that play into it? And how much is it in his head? But this is at a point now where it's, he's not playing his way through it. It's not, he's muscling through and now he's the guy you thought he was again.
I think this makes 9 combined missed kicks today. I think he came into the game with 7, 3 extra points and 4 field goals. So you add 1 to each of those totals. Yeah,
exactly. That's correct.
And I think that's a career worst for him. And he missed how many games? 3 or 4 games after the opener because of the injury. Yeah. So I'm with you, Vahe. Let me ask you this: when the Chiefs lined up for the 51-yarder at the end of regulation, how confident were you that it was going to go through?
Well, to Pam Clark's point on the screen in front of us, it seemed. Look, I've been persuaded by our younger analytics guys that I've got this all wrong to look at it this way, but I never understand the rationale for downshifting so you can just try a field goal, because I always feel like even if it's 90%, you can do things with the ball that are not risky that give you a shot at the end zone, or at least that are minimally risky. And then you're not left with a one and done opportunity. Like, oh, well, he didn't make it, so now that's it. I mean, so I felt like I'd have to look back at the sequence. I don't have it right in front of me and don't remember the full sequence, but absolutely they were content to milk the clock and get it into that situation. I think Patrick got sacked though, right in the middle of that.
No, that was an overtime.
That's right. That was overtime. That's right.
But they did attempt to pass on third and whatever it was, 10 or 11. They tried a little slip screen to McKinnon, and that didn't go anywhere. The Texans did a good job sniffing that one out. So I was glad that they attempted to pass, and usually that play has worked, gotten some yards for the Chiefs this year. I thought, gosh, I was thinking get some more yards, get at least 10 yards closer, make it a 41-yard field goal, although he missed an extra point which is a 33-yarder. How about you, Herbie? Do you think he was going to make it?
I did. I did. I just felt like, because you had the Mahomes magic. You had that 14-yard scramble, get them to the Texas 31-yard line. They're indoors. It's a controlled environment. If this were outdoors, maybe I'd have been like, this is 50-50 chance he's going to make this. I felt very confident that he was going to make that.
Well, just think, and by the way, good to hear from you, Pam. Just think he pulled the extra point and he pushed the field goal. So you talk about being all over the place. He was all over the place with his kicks today, and he's been as Mr. Reliable almost as much as you can be. In heading into this year, entered the year the second most accurate kicker in NFL history, and now you can't trust him. You just can't trust him. All right, guys. Now, having gone through all the problems, all the issues, such a downer for the Chiefs, they win the AFC West, and they are they're, as we said earlier, going to play at least one home playoff game, and if they can find a way to win that, probably will play a second home playoff game, which is great. I think what we'll do is save the conversation about what it means to be a 7-time division champion for our next show, which will be on Thursday. Understand that the Chiefs broke out the caps and the T-shirts in the locker room after the game, the division-winning caps and T-shirts. That's always a pretty cool thing. Good for the Chiefs. And the next game, it's a short week, right? Herbie, game is on Saturday at noon against the Seattle Seahawks. How's that going to affect what the Chiefs do this week practice-wise?
Yeah, they will be off Monday, so no media access Monday. Reed's not even talking Monday. And then what they're going to end up doing is Tuesday through Thursday, it'll be kind of like a regular Wednesday through Friday on regular weeks. I just want to make this point before you boot us out of here, Blair. To me, it's incredible that the Chiefs improved to 11-3. They've won the AFC West for the 7th straight time. And if you were to jump in on this show in the middle of it, you would have swore up and down the Chiefs lost. That just highlights the issues that we see, even with the win.
And just to play off of that, Blair, I almost made my first remark to riff off of your thing from earlier in the week, where this is now the Chiefs' 3rd straight loss, and based on the glum feelings afterwards. So one quick thing to add to some of the points we've made. I think this is really true, and I think maybe it's a consoling point for Chiefs fans. When you see a team every week, you can't. It's like the house I live in. I notice all the nonsense that I just can't ever get to. I wish I could spackle this and jack that and et cetera, and it just never gets done. You see it. And then when somebody comes over and sees the house, maybe they like it a little better. I feel like, every NFL fan watching its team has some misgivings about what their team has and where it's going. I mean, unless you're undefeated. And I think that ought to be a consoling point for Chiefs fans. Other teams have their flaws too. And it's that's why this is a great spectator sport. It's just great. Life as a Tennessee Titans fan, says someone behind the scenes.
And we'll thank him in just a moment. I'll just say these guys were a fumble recovery away from getting all Fs today from me. We're going to fail them all. You know what it is. Of course, you're both are right. 11-3 division champion. That is phenomenal. Herbie, you've been around for some pretty bad Chiefs seasons in your life, and it's only been peaches and roses, to borrow a Whit Merrifield term, for Vahe, who got here in 2013 along with Andy Reid, and is nothing but winning seasons and only 1 year out of the playoffs for you. And I've been here certainly longer than both of you, and I remember some really, really bad times. Having said all that, this is now a team, and I don't care who else is on the roster besides Patrick Mahomes. This is a team that plays for the Super Bowl every year. And when we're critical of teams in victory, it's because we hold the Chiefs to a standard that's fairly unreasonable given the success rate of all NFL teams. But that's kind of how we judge the Chiefs. Is it a Super Bowl worthy performance? And for the past, at least this 3-game road trip, Cincinnati, Denver, Houston, no, they have not turned in a Super Bowl worthy performance. Have they this season, as Herbie alluded to earlier? Yeah, they have. The opener against Arizona, the game at San Francisco, the game at Tampa Bay, the gutsy comebacks they've had this year, down 10, I think, to the Chargers. And yeah, they've turned in those types of performances, and they do it more often than not. So, but as long as we think of the Chiefs as a Super Bowl team, I'm going to criticize them when they win the way they won today. Glad they won. Good for business. Good for fandom. But they need to be better. So
yeah, you're right, Blair. But to your point, also, we're probably. I think it's reasonable to say, and some of the 1960s Chiefs might disagree with this, but this might be the era of eras in Chiefs history right now. We're still in the thick of it, and some of that's mysterious because we don't know the future, right? But 4 straight AFC Championship game hostings at Arrowhead Stadium.
It's amazing.
Still 2 out of the last 3 Super Bowls.
Fantastic.
Yeah, but you're right. The bar is higher, and good for everybody that it is, I think.
Yep, no doubt about it. We think of Super Bowl every training camp, right? We think of this team as, and that's how much the quarterback has spoiled us, and how much respect we have for ownership and coaching and all of that. So anyway, as always, a great conversation with Vahe Gregorian and Herbie Teope. Thank you so much, guys. And for George Howard, a Tennessee Titans fan, you may or may not know, you could be him. That will do it for today. Thanks to George Howard, who produced the podcast and the live stream on Sunday, and to our production crew of Monty Davis, Randy Mason, Jeff Rosen, and Scott Chasen. Tip of the cap to Vahe Gregorian and Herbie Teope for sharing their insights. Bunch of Chiefs stories in today's morning sports edition, the best digital sports page in America. See what I mean by going to liveedition.kansascity.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon with another SportsBeat KC, where we talk sports in Kansas City every day.